electricity in another part of the yard. And if you plan to put in landscape lighting, if you plan to put in a fountain or a waterfall or something like that, or if you plan just to, build a gazebo where you want to be able to plug anything from a ceiling fan to a coffee pot in, it's a whole lot easier to put that conduit underground, even if you don't, put all the wires in at that time. But I just hate to see it when people, build all of this, they get everything growing, and they decide they want that fountain back in the corner. The electrician comes in, and electricians are second only, no, they're third. Worst are roofers, second are plumbers, and third are electricians as far as messing up your landscape. All of a sudden you've got this big trench down there, cutting tree roots, digging up plants, things like that. Go ahead and plan for things like that, and if it involves, maybe even while the builder is still there, digging that trench, where's some of that gray PVC pipe, like it's going to be where hopefully we'll have ceiling fans in here in a week or two. That stuff is cheap. Doesn't cost hardly anything to go ahead and run that line out there and put a cap on either end. And if you decide you never need it, that's all well and good. But if you decide you want the power out there, pull the wire through and you got it further down the road without having to totally dig up your landscape. Same thing with water. If you're going to put a water garden out there in the back of the property, or if you're going to put a vegetable garden out there, go ahead and put your water line in. And if you're planning to have a sprinkler system, it's very easy to incorporate that along with the piping that they're already putting in. And speaking of, that should be, again, a very essential part of your landscape planning, is deciding if you're going to have a sprinkler system, and most people should. If you've got adequate water pressure, sprinkler systems will save you money because they will put out an even amount of water. But it is very, very important that you decide where the beds are going to be, where the grassy areas are going to be, because different kinds of plants need different amounts of water. And if you have beds in the same area where the lawn is, either the lawn's going to stay too dry or the beds are going to stay too wet, or vice versa, depending on what you plant. And that's a big problem I see with a lot of people redoing existing landscapes. They've realized that grass is not what they want. So they come in and they eliminate a big grassy area, put a beautiful bed curving through that area, but they didn't redo the sprinkler system that was in there. So you've got the grass and the beds being watered at the same time. If you happen to be in San Antonio, it is mandated with new systems that the lawn and the beds be zoned separately. In other words, that you don't have, a bed area watering the grass or vice versa. The other thing that you will have to have if you're in town is a rain sensor on your sprinkler system. But again, that's a very logical thing and something you certainly should have. But think about that while you're still in the planning process. Now, there are a few optical illusions, so to speak, that you can take advantage of. How many of y'all are on relatively small lots? Okay. If you have a small yard, you probably want to make it look a little bit bigger. If you're trying to make a small area look large, stay away from straight lines. I mean, if you go, if it's from here to the back wall there is a front door, you put a straight sidewalk in and man, you just pull the house right out to the street or to the driveway or whatever else. Anytime you're dealing in a small area and you want to make it larger, stay with curves. If the house were right there and this were the curved line right here, I'd start the sidewalk somewhere over here and have it meander up to the front door. You'd be amazed how much of an illusion, in effect, if you will, of a bigger area, how much that creates. If something you're trying to, you want the house to not look as close to the street and yet you can stand here and see the house, do something about that. Screen it off, or at least create a focal point to where the eye is drawn away. And like I say, never have a straight line that gets from point A to point B. Wind that, sidewalk in. Either plant something taller out here that's going to block it, or at least plant something really colorful or pretty, maybe put a water feature in. Put something in that distracts the eye, so when you drive up, the first front door, it's whatever is out here, and create that little winding path or whatever to get up to it. By the same token, no absolute straight beds. If you've got a really long house or something, if you want a really formal garden, sure, you may want straight beds in there. But one of the things we've always been proud of, at least in the original part of the nursery, there's not a straight sidewalk in there anywhere. If we had straight sidewalks in there, the visual impact would be that it was a much smaller area and certainly a much more boring area. So try to work unless again you're dealing with a very formal old English garden look or something like that, work as much flowing and curving lines into it as possible. That might include the driveway. I'm not as crazy about curving driveways because people tend to back into trees and things like that. Not you, of course, but your visitors. But sidewalks, keep them angled. Your flower beds and things like that, especially if they're small beds, creating a flowing look, to the bed just makes it a whole lot more visually interesting. Now you're sitting here, you're looking at this piece of paper that you're starting to draw your landscape plan on. You're trying to visualize, you've got it out there and you're looking at this bed and you're thinking, well gosh, exactly how am I going to decide how to make this bed look? A garden hose is one of the most useful things in the world. Take that hose out there and curve it around whatever pattern. If you don't like it, move it back and forth. Do this over a period of a week or two. Play with all sorts of different shapes and patterns. If you've got old hoses around, whatever else, get out and lay out your beds with a hose or something like that, and then stand back and look at it. Chances are you're not going to like what you do the first time. Of course, a piece of rope or anything like that will do the same thing. If you have a lot of rock around, maybe just use rocks to lay out this sort of thing. I would advise you to do one thing, and that is, in this era of digital photography especially, every time you lay something out, take a picture of it. Because you may then decide, after you've tried 3 or 4 other things, you think, I like my first design best of all. Now, what was it? I'll give you an example of that from the days we built a nursery. Our winding sidewalks and things like that would just finish redoing the interior of the building. Remember, we started this place on a shoestring, and Roberta and her husband and I did everything. And we'd built some walls and things. We had a lot of wood scraps left over. And so we'd had them bring in and dump the concrete thing that we turned into the fish pond there. But we got out, and using our scraps of wood, we laid out all of our sidewalks. And I mean, we worked at it for 3 days before we thought that we really had it the way we wanted it. Roberta got up on the roof and took a picture of it. Greatest thing that ever happened, because her mother, who many of y'all knew, was a kind and wonderful person, an extremely helpful person. She got to work before we did the next day and decided she'd pick up all that crap that was out in the back. What could you say? But we were eternally grateful that we had that picture, because we had worked very hard to lay out all those pathways. Today it's so much easier. Probably everybody here has access to a digital camera. You can take an unlimited number of pictures and just print out the ones you like. But as you do these different things, as you play with your different designs, take a picture of it, just in case you have to it. The other thing you should do is go around and pick out landscapes that you really like. I am not a super creative person. I am blessed with working with Donna, who's an ASID certified designer, Wendy, who has a wonderful talent for these things, Roberta has a great talent for it, Amanda. We got a lot of ladies around here that's just disgusting how much talent these people have. Don't feel bad if you're having trouble figuring out what you want to do with your landscape. Begin by going around and picking out landscapes that you like, and go up and knock on the door and say, do you mind if I take a picture of some of this? Most people will be immensely flattered that you've asked. I don't think I've ever been turned down when I want to take a picture of a plant or a landscape or anything like that. I don't recommend you go running around with a camera unless you've told the people you're going to do so. But drive around the neighborhood. Drive around neighborhoods that, maybe are above means or my means to live in, but you like some of the things that they've done in the landscaping. Take pictures. Print out the ones you like and sit down and analyze what it is that you like about those plans. And then you can go to work on incorporating the features that are practical into your own landscape. Even if you can't afford to do it, even if you don't have the time to do it now, work all of these ideas into your plans before you start thinking about putting the first plant into the ground. Very important consideration is how much time you want to spend, or how much time you have to spend